If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to Mindshock. This is your host, Bruce McGuire, and you are listening to NASA's Apollo Missions series. Whether or not NASA hoaxed the moon landings. And if you haven't checked out episode 1, make sure you check that out. This is episode 2, The Smoking Gun. Or possibly The Smoking Guns. We're going to go over not one, but 2 pieces of critical information that might be the end of this debate once and for all. And bold claims, but this is Mindshock, where the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure, but we're not even sure about that. As always, if you find the podcast interesting and informative, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. You could also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube for access to exclusive streams and chats. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for notifications, make sure you allow your device to have those notifications come through. Like and share the podcast, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic logical analysis, co-podcaster requests. You could also be a guest on the podcast depending on your tier. Questions, comments, theories, not suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. And trigger warning for the authority-worshipping cultists and the coincidence theorists. At least understand what is being discussed here before jumping in a triggered and Dunning-Kruger stupor to make a comment for the sake of making a comment. Because if all you have is faith and fallacy and an incomprehension of what's being presented, that's not going to be conducive to any kind of actual legitimate dialogue. However, for educational purposes, feel free to do that, because Dunning-Kruger stylings are, of course, endlessly hilarious, and this is a logical podcast, so pointing out faith and fallacy as types of arguments and the invalidity of such is, of course, one of the staples of the podcast here. I have addressed the moon landing several times. Now, this is kind of logic 101, but something the coincidence theorists, the authority-worshipping cultists, those that worship at the altar of scientism instead of science, where they put blind faith in corrupt authorities with horrible track records, aka government agencies, they fail to understand that the burden of proof is on positive claims, and extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. One is not called upon to prove a negative. So if you say you went to Mars yesterday, it's not up to everyone to disprove it. It's up to you to prove it. And then if you say your dog ate your homework, the excuse they lost 18,000 reels of telemetry data, that would at least provide some kind of evidence, just saying they lost it, supposedly the greatest achievement in the history of mankind. That all these moon rocks given to different governments and museums, they're just petrified wood from Arizona. I mean, these are not legitimate, these are not extraordinary pieces of evidence to back up these extraordinary claims. But the authority-worshipping cultists, the coincidence theorists, they just fail to understand. They have a fundamental lack of understanding about how logic works, about how the scientific method works, about how burden of proof works. And all these clueless goofs will just blindly defend the moon landing with religious fervor without actually having a legitimate logical dialogue in terms of what evidence can be used to hold up the theory that NASA went to the moon and what evidence cannot. Now, for the purpose of this podcast, even though one is not called upon to prove a negative, that doesn't mean one can't prove a negative. For example, someone claiming to go to Mars yesterday, if there's security footage at different stages of the day from different areas with many different witnesses and GPS cell phone data, I mean, there's a lot of traffic cameras, etc. There's a lot of pieces of information that can disprove a particular individual went to Mars. Not that it has to be done, because nobody should take that on blind faith alone. So are we going to disprove the moon landings once and for all in this podcast right now? The Mindshock listeners are waiting with bated breath, and I will attempt not to disappoint them. So we might have not one, but 2 smoking guns that we're going to go over. Now, there's a mountain of evidence against the moon landing, just countless anomalies, clearly faked footage with wires. Now, that doesn't mean that NASA didn't go to the moon. That just means the footage is fake. So that's something that the more hardcore conspiracy theorists, those that understand how human fallibility, human corruption works, some of them, the fringe minority, they that claim to know things for sure. Here on Mindshock, we don't claim anything is true or untrue, because again, we're not going to hallucinate that we know the truth with limited information. I mean, nobody who doesn't have access to the highest levels of clearance in government would be able to know for sure if they did go. Now, that doesn't mean we can't logically examine and possibly have smoking guns that they didn't go, or at least the footage is all faked. So, let's start with this interesting post just a few months ago by Aleti on the conspiracy subreddit, which is a cesspool. I mean, there's plenty of critical thinking conspiracy theorists. There's plenty of clueless goof coincidence theorists. There's everything and anything in between. But occasionally there are some solid posts. This is one of them that brings to light a certain method of technology that can be used to ascertain whether certain images are faked, or at least cast doubt on the validity of images. So this post is quite interesting here. I owe the moon landing conspiracy theorists an apology. I always believed the theories to be crazy. But why? I had never really looked into it. Again, that's called cognitive dissonance. Because when people are hopelessly indoctrinated into the cult of state and authority worship and scientism, they just believe whatever the mainstream authorities say on the idiot box. They don't question. They're not scientifically skeptical. They just believe it on religious blind faith in corrupt authorities with horrible track records of failure and lying. But continuing here, there are some actual crazy theories out there. I have been a bit more open-minded the past 10 years, and so when this rolled out for a chance to disprove the conspiracy theory once and for all using a method of EMF extraction, I found myself proving the conspiracy theorists correct. And that's interesting too. Like, what's the track record of conspiracy theorists who are scientifically skeptical of these corrupt authorities with horrible track records? Everything from MK Ultra to Skiji, Gulf of Tonkin. I mean, it's just the poisoning of St. Louis. I mean, geoengineering, aka chemtrails, all this stuff. I mean, what's the scoreboard here versus conspiracy theorists and coincidence theorists? I mean, are the coincidence theorists even accidentally correct about anything yet? Okay, so this EMF extraction method is labeled by Andrew Letty as a novel method, uncovers the color spectrum of light from white images, and reveals black holes. This was published on Medium.com by Andrew Letty March 12th. Which means we can finally put an end to this debate. Did we go to the moon? Images of lighting, the moon, EMF frequencies, black holes, and the galaxy. When I was trying to figure out a method to measure the distance light travels between obstructions through atmospheric fog, I found a method which allowed for the extraction of light through seemingly white images. And then I accidentally found a really fast and easy way to extract black holes from an image without needing thousands of gigabytes of data. The process takes maybe 30 seconds. While the spectrum of light above is from one process, the multiple colors of the craters of the moon are from 4 processes. I had used this technique for months and have studied thousands of photos. Well, actually, I've studied videos as well, so hundreds of thousands of photos. I should have said I studied thousands of environments. So here we can see 2 channels of colors, one positive, one negative. You'll notice one is CYMK, the other is RGB. The sun has never ever failed to recreate the exact same pattern with the exact same distance of color, nor change the color. Before we get to the moon, I would like you to become a bit more familiar with what the raw processed images look like. No adjustments are ever made between these images. They all go through the exact same process. Here we have raw data, the original image, and the fully processed image. I like how nice the processed image looks, but tend to hide much of the information I need to determine the environment. I'll show you a few. You'll notice that anything with natural light will give off the same exact order of CMYK, cyan, yellow, magenta, and well, key. The moon tends to look perfectly normal as the above would show in every image unless someone edits the hell out of it. It becomes very easy to spot a real star, natural light, and fake environments. There is one fake environment below and the 3 pictures of a real star. It should be fairly obvious which images the star belongs to. The fake image has 2 fake stars. Both are stars, the latter is a reflection of the sun. Transformative data representations of electromagnetic frequency. The image with bright red, bright green, and bright yellow is the imposter image. Those waves appear to prove part of my framework. Essentially, the Earth is dual negative monopole. The interference of electromagnetic waves tend to produce red streaks. The Hubble telescope recently took a neat photo of a triangle cluster. I believe it was from the angle and exposure. Even at great distances, the colors of light prove true. The following images are either inside with human-made lights or along these lines. And you can see huge difference here. Green, yellow, blue always like to appear together as well as scattered across the entire environment when a human-made light is around, with the exception of... Interesting. Wow. Very, very interesting. The difference of different light. Black, yellow, blue, green all like to hang around human-made machines. This is a mix of human-made light and natural light. Note, the dark trim is not the same as the ones prior. I mean, even just on a basic level, the natural light is just a lot more pleasant than the crazy, sporadic, sharp spectrum of colors in artificial lights. So here's the Earth, Mars surface, Mars satellite view. I am now going to prep you for some different situations, and you should not need any reference photos of these. They are clear as to what they are. The first image, however, I will reference because this is what a fake beam of light looks like. And an alleged nuclear explosion here. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole for the purpose of this podcast, but... because that could be any kind of an explosion with any kind of radiation. Not necessarily nuclear, but... Okay, plasma via lightning does not change the order of light and stays consistent. Lightning is very interesting. It puts all of the energy down, but always spouts a large burst of energy out of the side. From a bright white spot manifests a black hole. I am pretty sure this is a black hole, is the galactic center of the Andromeda Galaxy. I reprocessed and reworked it to extract and divide and came out the black hole. This was kind of on accident. I did not expect it to work since they had to use GB of photos and then they had to slowly expose the photos to reveal a black hole. This method took less than 30 seconds and, dare I say it, is at higher quality. A couple more images here. Some of them look really crazy. Huh. This method has been trustworthy from inside to outside, around the Earth, in the International Space Station, and other galaxies. In the ocean, in the dark of night, to phenomena not normally present, such as nuclear explosions or nuclear meltdown, to theaters and movie sets. One moment of truth. I processed the first image of the moon landing, and my belief interference activated instantly right on cue. I was not exposed as long as most to the cause of this defect, but it still appears. I have to be as self-aware as much as possible to keep my bias down to 0. If I automatically reject a very possible alternative, then I have failed as a human, a researcher, and no longer will I be able to contribute to society. Those who do not ask questions where questions are warranted are useless to progress. Those who ask questions to stop progress because they do not want change are just as useless. I have studied human behavior all of my life, and the one thing I am certain about is that cognitive dissonance is not the issue. It is a belief interference for the need to be right because of years of negative reinforcement training from public school. I luckily did very difficult puzzles and cognitive exercises until 7th grade. It was by accident. I just enjoyed those activities. Our education system teaches you that if anyone says anything different, then they are wrong and they will fail. It gets worse the longer you stay in secondary education. The 3 signs, MAD, mock, angry, delusion. The last part will cause your ability to read to cease. It will cause you to shut down and ignore all conflicting information. The only way to go beyond this defect is to suffer through the massive headaches as your brain rearranges the structure of information which is stored within your brain. The older the belief or idea, the bigger the headache. The moon landing was something I held to be absolute truth my entire life. Laughing causes you to relieve the instant pain which hits you in the head as your memories start to associate and rearrange differently. Everything within your brain is connected to seemingly random events, names, people, words, smells, etc. And so to change a core belief would mean you must rearrange accordingly so that all connections know to point to the new belief. Pair this with a negative reinforcement and you will do everything in your power to shut down. I fell asleep for 2 days after experiencing the worst headache of my life after processing all of the images. When I woke up, I ignored it for an hour. I cannot ignore something like this. I found it simple to reevaluate now that I had taken the time needed to accept the fact that we may have never landed on the moon. Well, here's another thing, we. So you can tell this guy, he's pretty thoroughly indoctrinated. We, this associative collective narcissism and collective hubris of a species. Even if humans landed on the moon, it's not we, it's those humans. They landed, if they did. But anyway, I did a whole podcast on the we arguments on Mindshock, so make sure you check that out. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a movie director and I was obsessed with 3D animation and stop motion. I grew up playing with physics engines and so I do not need mathematics to understand how an event will occur. I, however, love mathematics and so it is easy for me to imagine and then manifest in the form of an equation. I am a very modest liberal. Did you not think I would eventually fact check you? Short rant for those without open minds. If you are already closed-minded enough to think the American government would not lie to you, perhaps you should check yourself. Do not bother to read this. I am not trying to convince you. I am not actually giving a verdict on this. This is something I hate to believe, but I have to evaluate it unbiased or else I become absolutely useless. Copy and paste are good for quick regurgitations, but it is useless. I have my opinion on it. I will give you the information I saw, and that will be the last I speak about it. And I mean this wholeheartedly, don't really care if they did or did not land on the moon. Do you know how hard it would be to actually land on the moon and then relaunch and travel 230,000 miles back to Earth? They absolutely went to space. That is about as much as I will credit them with. Some people don't believe they went to space either, or at least not outer space. Obviously people have been up, pretty high up. Definitely they've been there. There's plenty of evidence of that. First, I went into this trying to disprove crazy conspiracy theorists. I, however, am not delusional enough to be one-sided. I do not stop at the first question like most do. I dig about 3 questions deep per instance. Once it branches out between 2 variables, each branch is evaluated. Do you really think I would release if I was not positive about it? Yes, I found a way to detect black holes very easily. Oh, and just for the hell of it, the moon landing never happened. Worst strategy ever. I had never once actually evaluated nor questioned the moon footage. Why? Because I did not want it to be untrue. This guy does seem kind of honest about his biases there. His mental strength is clearly greater than most authority-worshipping cultists with blind faith in the Church of NASA or these other institutions that they treat as churches and all their information as gospel. While I gave myself time to reevaluate this from scratch a 3rd time, days apart, I noticed every discrepancy all within 20 minutes of viewing the photos and archival footage from NASA. I have only heard blips of what conspiracy theorists have said on pop culture television. I had, and still have, zero desire to read the straws at which they grasp for. I only know of one refutation, and that is the direction of light. It's actually kind of funny because it's the coincidence theorists that grasp at straws to try to explain away all the anomalies where, the conspiracy theorists are just being scientifically skeptical and pointing out anomalies and problems like Swiss cheese in the moon landing narrative. The thought process for each evaluation. All right, I know you're waiting for kidding, but I do not do that. It may help you understand much better if you are on a desktop computer. Before we go into the forensics of light for this event, I am going to walk you through my initial reactions. I really do not know why I wanted this to be factual. I never had any interest in it. I have never seen the video or looked upon the photos. Again, it's just kind of like a safety blanket for coincidence theorists. To think that they've been hoodwinked this severely and this obviously. It's weird. Some of these conspiracies, the more obvious the conspiracy, the more all of these clueless coincidence theorists dig their head in the sand and pretend it's not obvious that it's a conspiracy or cover-up. It's really weird. It's like the more obvious it is, the more their ego is triggered that they were hoodwinked because it's so obvious. If it was hidden extremely well, maybe the cognitive dissonance and the triggering wouldn't be as severe because the ego might not be as damaged if it was like a really good, smart cover-up. First thoughts, there are no stars. Why does the flag have a wire mesh within it? Perhaps it was to ensure a prominent display. How are two adjacent diagonal light beams possible? The EMF extraction shows one beam left pink and another one right white. The boot prints are too large for that suit. That is not a person. That is a very well-made toy-like figure. I mean, I don't know how he determines that. I mean, the boot prints are definitely off. Huh. There's a lot of problems with this footage. If a wire mesh exists in the fabric, then there's a great possibility that the moon landing was stop motion. The foil on the craft is far too perfect to have gone through a launch, as well as a distance of 232,000 miles. The foil, as they apply it to crafts, is usually very wrinkled already. There is now zero possible way for this to be standard size foil. The photo is at least a miniature. The landing... I mean, the lighting conditions, too. I mean, again, let's put everything aside and just the quick eye test. I mean, the lighting just looks like a lighting on a movie set. It doesn't even look like outdoor lighting. Like, compare this landing to, again, just, let's say, whether a movie or a home video shot outdoors. That's just not a natural lighting setup. I mean, it's such even light across all sides. I mean, just the basic eye test. Something was scrubbed out of the first image, it is very clear. Who the hell took the picture of the lunar landing? This is a genuine photo of a life-size replica. The foil on this image is wrinkled to the size that it should be. And that's interesting. I don't know if I've ever even looked at the foil wrinkles. Because there is a problem with the previous photo we looked at. And then this photo has much more, the wrinkles do look much more accurate as normal foil wrinkles. The bronzed foil is blurred out, but it is clear enough to see the many creases that it should have. Next picture here. It is odd for a camera of high quality to not have motion blur, yet be unable to pick up any trace of a star. I wonder if the video had any stars. Yep. There are a lot of videos for this, but I went and dug for the most unedited version and also sourced multiple versions. This video luckily had both of the new and the old together. The greatest proof of all. And this guy didn't even go into the just the frame rates. On the previous episode, I went over the frame rates. I went over the actual footage in terms of simulations regarding gravity, etc., because they would be able to jump, obviously, a lot higher. As they did in NASA's own simulations of what it would be like to walk on the moon mathematically. Those actually looked relatively realistic in terms of movement. But what we have here, again, just changed the frame rate, and all of a sudden you can see that it was clearly shot on Earth. With the dust settling and all that. The greatest proof of all is the easiest and most damning of the proofs to prove. When you realize you do not even need my EMF extractions to disprove the moon landing. Everything is within the video and the images of the flag. The flag is frozen in every image, but look at the claymation animation style it adapts in the official video from NASA. But it bothered me. The frames between each crisp frame were artificially blended to give the illusion of additional frames. A trick used in cartoons and stop motion. I took away tweened frames and slowed it down by half. You will notice three things. The flag is animated very well to act like it is in zero gravity, meaning the wire mesh was not there for prominent display. 2, the cord being pulled by the other astronaut is stiff like wire. Even in zero gravity, a coaxed cord would not act like that. 3, why did the restoration degrade it further? I mean, yeah, it's a lot softer and blurrier than the original. It's kind of weird. Oh, that's what they meant about shadows going in two directions? Yikes. Why the hell were people calling someone crazy for noticing that? The crazy ones are not conspiracy theorists. The crazy ones are those who are so blind that they delude themselves into thinking something is not there. And that's, of course, a staple of coincidence theorists. I do not have to do any forensics to know that we never landed on the moon. Why is the other angle never shown? Why is that rock always in the background? Also, those helmets were designed to reflect infrared, gamma rays, X-rays, and any frequency of color that is deadly. Yet in the photo a few above, there is no reflection. In transit, firmly standing on ground, tag hanging down as if gravity was applied to it, which is weird. Did they not go to space at all? I am beginning to have my doubts. This is where the lunar landed, yet none of that environment is ever shown on foot. There are also 3 straight lines stabilizing this thing. But the disturbing part of that is the fact that someone tried to hide it under the imperfections of the moon. Because I was about to actually just say that could be some kind of artifacting over the top, but yeah, it is weird. It kind of blends through the moon. That's strange. Why can't you see the flag on the moon? The official response, it fell over. If you are part of this species, do not question everything that exists. Question that which has no answer. And stop listening to other humans. Most of them are clearly too influenced. If I sound overconfident, that is because I did the forensics multiple times prior to writing this. I know how this already ends. You see that receiver transmitter? It's facing the wrong way. This was the moon phase, July 20th, 1969. The moon's orbit viewed from above. Huh. What's he trying to say here? Oh, relative to where they landed, if they're transmitting back to Earth, it's facing the wrong way. That's funny. That's funny. All right, I could talk for hours on the bad production value. All right, so Earth looks normal, the launch normal, the moon from afar and zoomed in, normal as we would expect from the above. Inside the ISS, normal. There is nothing consistent about the moon. The only consistency was that of 2001: A Space Odyssey. I am a big fan of HAL. It is exactly what humans would do. It is what they are doing. My favorite lyric is from an epic rap battle because nothing could be closer to the truth. I'm in your lap and in your pocket. How are you going to shoot me down when I guide the rocket? One final look at some non-staged photos. And a quick look at a movie from Complete Random. Well, there was only one movie to choose from. I did not lie. Okay. Now that we have all that data locked into our heads, let's look at the spectrum of light within the moon photos. What are the chances that it matches up with a movie set? I even gave it the benefit of the doubt, and I cheated in favor of the moon landing being authentic. I gave each image 4 notches in both directions for 8 separate analysis profiles. Here's what the moon looks like when you color burn all 8 layers. Here's what it looks like when I use various techniques which allow for 3D wave location, black hole extractor, and a new one which is right below this. I do not have a use for it, it is just pretty. It mattered 0% of the time. The green hue is present on most of these. Green is a prime indicator of studio lighting when on the base channel. Natural light on the moon above did not change at all. The only change was the distance between waves. Remember this photo. This was the first photo I processed. Remember this green glow. It actually appeared on most of the images, but there are already too many photos. Instead, I will share the weird ones across the spectrum. Even if you cannot see the stars, there should still be indicators that they exist. These images do no such thing, and I find it really troubling because the shadows do really weird and backwards actions. Look at the shadow of the astronaut above. Yeah, that is kind of weird. Huh. Multiple light sources. Here's what's weird, though. Let me just interject here for a moment. I mean, whether Kubrick directed the moon landing or not, I mean, that's going to be a separate episode in and of itself because the Kubrick anomalies are just, I mean, the coincidence stack on that one. Wow. But let's put that aside. Regardless, how hard would it have been to just have some tiny little lights in the studio ceiling or in the background, or at least some kind of fake wallpaper background with stars? I mean, was that just an oversight? I mean, it's kind of weird. I mean, obviously, they didn't think some guy would be doing EMF color spectrum extraction and analyzing it to this depth. I mean, I think that was one of the greatest failures. They didn't foresee the consumer high def tech, or maybe they did and didn't care. Maybe that's part of the agenda, is that's supposed to be leaked. I mean, who knows? But obviously, on those grainy, crappy TVs way back when, before VCRs, it was just, I mean, I guess they just didn't anticipate it because it is hard to tell that it's fake just on that, with an old, crappy TV set from the 60s. The yellow and blue shows up a lot in theater lighting. None of the images are consistent. I mean, that's another good point, too, because whether it's real or fake, like let's say there's some kind of electromagnetic interference on the moon. Obviously, I mean, it wouldn't look like studio lighting. It would look like something else. But at least it would be regardless of what it looks like. It should be consistent throughout because they're in a singular location. So the sun is, at the time they're taking all these photographs and videos, the sun's where it is, the earth's where it is, the stars are where they are. It should be consistent, but it's not. That's kind of weird, too. It gets better, though. Here are the only images that were consistent. Photo of the launch, the rocket, the Earth, their rescue, and Congress. The TV within NASA gave off the correct spectrum of light because it is not using the light from the environment. It is using the light from the screen. Interesting. Whoa, that's very interesting. Because it's a photo of a photo, or a video or photo of another photo. Because they had a projector set up. The most damning of all, the origin of light. Check out where the waves are originating from. Wow. You can easily see the square from an old image they used to blend in the Earth. This is a famous one, actually. It's been discussed quite a bit, where they just copy-paste the Earth into images. No, actually, this is the most damning evidence. The original uncut video of the moon landing. In most spots of the video, the responder from Houston waits approximately 3 to 4 seconds to respond.
Okay, would you verify the position, the opening I ought to have on the camera? Stand by. Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now. Neil, we can see you coming. Okay, I just checked, getting back up to that first step. That isn't collapsed too far, but it's adequate to get back up. Roger, we copy. It's a pretty good little jump. Buzz, this is Houston. F2, 1/160th second for shadow photography on the sequence camera. Okay. At the foot of the ladder, the limb footbeds are only depressed in the surface about 1 or 2 inches, although the surface appears to be very, very fine grained as you get close to it. It's almost like a powder. Ground mass is very fine. I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Um, there seems to be no difficulty in moving around as we suspected. It's even perhaps easier than the simulations of 16G that we performed in various simulations on the ground. Absolutely no trouble to walk around. Okay, the descent engine did not leave a crater of any size. It has about 1 foot clearance on the ground. We're essentially on a very level place here. I can see some evidence of rays emanating from the descent engine, but very insignificant amount. Okay, Buzz, we ready to bring down the camera? I'm all ready. I think it's 2 miles squared away in good shape. Okay. Okay, you'll have to pay out all the LEC. It looks like it's coming out nice and evenly. Okay, it's quite dark here in the shadow and a little hard for me to see that I have good footing. I'll work my way over into the sunlight here without looking directly into the sun. Okay, it's taut now. Unofficial time on the first step, 109.2420. Okay, I think you're pulling the wrong one. Okay, I'm ready to pull it down now. There was still a little bit left in the... Okay, don't hold it quite so tight. Okay? Okay. looking up at the limb, I'm standing directly in the shadow now, looking up at Buzz in the windows. And I can see everything quite clearly. The light is sufficiently bright, backlighted into the front of the limb, that everything is very clearly visible. Okay, I'm going to be changing the okay.
The surgeon says that
Camera installed on the ICU bracket.
surgeon says the crew is doing well. Data is good. Crew is doing well.
And I'm still in the LEC on the secondary stretch. I'll step out and take some of my first pictures here.
Roger, Neil. We're reading you loud and clear. Let's see, getting some pictures and the contingency sample. 35.5 minutes of PLSS time expended now. Neil, this is Houston. Did you copy about the contingency sample? Over.
All right, you're going to get to that just as soon as I finish these picture series.
236,752 miles divided by 186,282 miles per second equals 1,270 milliseconds times 2 equals 2,540 milliseconds for communications round trip. In 2 of the areas in the original video, he responds within 395 milliseconds and 460 milliseconds. The official curator of video archives stated, sometimes to cut down on times of dead air, the gaps are shortened. Bull expletive. There is a lot of dead air in the video. And if they edited 2, why not all of them inconsistent? They would not have the audacity to publicly display it, though, I am sure.
Well, let me move that over the edge for you. Okay, ready for me to come out? Yeah, just stand by a second. I'll move this over the handrail. Okay? All right, that's got it. Are you ready? All set. Okay, you saw what difficulties I was having. I'll try to watch your bliss from underneath here. All right, the backup camera is position. Okay, your bliss looks like it's clear and okay. The toes are about to come over the sill. Okay, now drop your bliss down. There you go, you're clear. And laterally, you're good. Got an inch clearance on top of your bliss. Okay, you need a little bit of arching of the back to come down. That's like what you're doing. How far are my feet from the Okay, you're right at the edge of the porch. Okay. Back in from... Okay, I'm going to leave that 1 foot up there and both hands down about the 4th rung up. There you go. Okay, now I think I'll do the same. A little more. About another inch. There, you got it? That's a good step. Yep. About a 3-footer. Beautiful view. Isn't that something? Magnificent sight out here. Magnificent desolation.
Biotite is a brown mica substance.
Okay, Houston, I'm going to change lenses on you.
Roger, Neil.
Okay, Houston, tell me, get a new picture.
Neil, this is Houston. That's affirmative. We're getting a new picture. You can tell it's a longer focal length lens. And for your information, all LEM systems are go. Over.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Houston, how close are you able to get things in focus?
This is Houston. We can see Buzz's right hand. It's somewhat out of focus. I'd say we were focusing down to probably about 8 inches to a foot behind the position of his hand when he was pulling out the cable.
Okay, how's the temperature looking there? Temperature of the camera is showing cold. I'm a little cool. I think I'll take some. I'm on intermediate now, Houston, and I show 3.78. No flags, 74.
Houston, roger out.
And we'll probably need a little distance at back location. Television camera. And Neil, look at the minus I stress. Your direction of travel there. traveling from right to left. Right. So this one over here underneath the methane where the probe first hit. Minus my probe first hit. I got plenty of cable. You got plenty. Plenty more. Okay, I think I got the end of it. Something interesting in the bottom of this little crater here. Maybe. Keep going. We got a lot more. Okay. Getting a little harder to pull out here.
If you stand on the ladder facing forward, the minus Y strut is the landing gear to your left.
Say I am, Buzz. 40, 50 feet. Why don't you turn around and let them get a view from there and see what the field of view looks like. You're backing into the cable. Okay. Turn around to your right, you better. I don't want to go into the sun if I can avoid it. That's right, yeah. I just leave it. All right, let it sit like that and walk around it.
I mean, it's also stated it's uncut, so then it's not uncut. But here's the thing. Some kind of audio engineer actually mentioned this. Regardless of the timing in the video, the size of the transmitter would have to be so gigantic. I forget what he said. He said it would have to be something like a couple 100 feet or something like that in order to transmit to the Earth, and the delay would be astronomical. Because I believe he's using the calculation here as if it was on Earth with the correct transmitters. But it's on the moon, so it would be the size of the transmitter would have, and the power would have to be different. So I'm not sure how he got those numbers, but even if we assume best case scenario and they could transmit that fast, it still doesn't match up, which is what he's pointing out here. Unless there was some funny business editing, in which case they could clearly clear that up by releasing the uncut footage, which they said they did, but now all of a sudden it's not uncut? How do we still believe this? They even did a moon rock unveiling on Twitter. Right, but the lunar flag and track marks are nowhere. We have the International Space Station. This argument could be over by the end of next week. You know why they won't look? Because they think people care. Really, honestly, do you honestly care if we landed on the moon 50 years ago? No, and I completely understand because landing on the moon is a very tricky thing to do. What do you think the scheduled and out-of-control rocket was for? I apologize, I'm a bit cranky that I had to find this and that it has taken nearly 30 hours to complete, but hey, black holes. And that's that. Wow, I mean, yeah, I mean, there's tons of more evidence, obviously, like all the fake wires and all that in the footage. The 18,000 reels of telemetry data mysteriously disappearing. And then, of course, the moon rocks being petrified wood from Arizona. And that's without even getting into the psychology of the press conference after and all the interviews and all that. There's a couple other things, too, that were mentioned in other documentaries which I thought were hilarious. In the museum, in the NASA museum, or one of the museums, some guy came in with like a measuring tape and he measured the life support pack on the astronaut suit, and then he measured the hatch on the lander. and it couldn't fit without taking off the pack. So again, either it's just sheer incompetence and they had wrong sizes and those weren't the actual vehicles or suits used on the moon, even if they did go. But the fact that nothing adds up, I mean, that's kind of hilarious. And I mean, there's a ton of stuff. There's also all the scientists that mysteriously got killed, the hanging of the lemon in testing. Just weeks before, there's news footage or documentary footage about them asking the NASA scientists, those in charge of the program. They said they're not even close. There's no metal materials that can withstand the temperatures. I mean, just there's so much that when you look at it in the context of time, because when it was all going down, all of a sudden then magically it happens and then nobody questions it for how long? Let's go into smoking gun number 2. And this one is weird. So WikiLeaks allegedly released the behind the scenes of the moon landing filmed in a desert in Nevada. Now, here's what's weird. This gets really, really weird because officially, there's no official WikiLeaks release. This was just labeled as such. The coincidence theorists then dismiss it. Oh, it wasn't really WikiLeaks that released it. And then they also mixed in some scenes from Capricorn 1. Well, here's the thing. If they really were going to do some kind of release, would they add in the plausible deniability? Because it's kind of destabilizing to just release something definitively like this. So is it more of a soft disclosure where there's a built-in plausible deniability? Where they don't release it officially, they release it unofficially, or maybe it's not even WikiLeaks. Maybe it's some other organization, they just use the WikiLeaks name, even if it's real behind the scenes, and then, just to make sure that it could be written off, they spliced in some Capricorn 1 footage just to leave it all ambiguous. But it's on archive.org. It's currently dated here, March 2nd, 2021, but here's the thing. This was up years ago. It's just been, I guess it's just put on archive at that date. But this is many years old. I think, I don't know, is it at least 5-10 years old? But let's take a look at it here.
WikiLeaks has released more classified documents than the rest of the world's media combined.
Picking up the wound. Energetic information engaged. Light them all up.
You want to be in pictures. That's the best?
Let's say it's another one to print. I think that's awfully good. That one and the one before it were pretty good.
Do we have about 15 seconds?
Oh yeah, you got a lot of time here.
I claim this land in the name of...
What do you got now? Now move.
Cut it.
Ready? And action. Cut it, Jim. There you go.
Quit that.
Print 4. He needs to go off this mark.
Once more, please.
Otherwise, he,
Let me walk it.
When you tell me I don't want to back in the middle of it.
Here's what we really need is for him to go to his left and then kind of veer back. Is that right? No lights on the car. No lights. No lights. One more right away, guys.
Headlight.
Exactly right, and it has to be. We have to be high enough so that we've got you against blue sky and not against Earth as you're coming in. You're coming in a descending approach as you get in.
Over. We can reverse it. said, go back and we'll rehearse it and see how it looks.
Okay.
Ready? And action.
Excellent.
Quiet. Action, helicopter.
Head's laid on the mic.
Ready? And action. Ready? And turn.
Use the second marker there.
Love you, and I
Well, this is a hell of a time not to.
That's right.
We're in a little deep now,
right.
fella, let me tell you.
We're rolling.
Stand by, here we go.
Marker?
Yeah.
Right now. Jim, that was better.
Forget it. Wait a minute.
The third beat. Okay. Cut the third.
Boy, Houston, the beauty of this place is just absolutely incredible. There's another spectacular view. The pilot who missed the crater. Watch out. Watch out, John.
Ready? And action. Let's say it's another one to Fred. I think that's awfully good.
Did they use clap sticks on this one? Be a mic tap hit.
Big. Action.
what the feelings of the Apollo program are, and a symbol of mankind that we can live in peace and harmony in the future.
I didn't take him all the way in. Rather than even say anything about the, I like to keep the stuff to an absolute minimum.
Peter has...
coming up down, I'll tell you I'm off the ground.
Head slate. You want to head?
You land there. You landed in the field. Whoa.
Okay, you can. This will be the biplane coming overhead, about 300 feet.
The third seat. Okay. Cut the third.
Any other call?
Tail slide coming up right now.
Right now. Jim, that was better.
Rehearsal, guys.
All right, this is just rehearsal. Ready? And action.
Altitude's a little high.
I think it's been almost 10 years since we've been trying to do this. Pitch forward, get a really good view of the
You're
landing
looking
site.
great. Coming up 9 minutes. Roger, understand. Go for landing. 3,000 feet.
Peter has...
Coming up now, I'll tell you I'm off the ground.
Peter has put a mark back there where he wants it to land.
What's it look like?
5.5 pounds.
But it's a tire and
9
something.
forward. Forward.
This is a good spot. Good to know? There. Yeah, that is.
Yeah, command override off. Engine arm on.
We're home.
413 is in.
Man on the moon.
Okay.
Ready? And action.
What do you think?
Well, it's not a good idea, but what were you going to do?
Ready? And action. Ready, and turn.
Right now, Jim, that was better.
Forget it. Wait a minute. I don't think it's voice. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. This is this shot, right? Only then, what are you going to move around another master before you get in closer?
Oh no, this sequence right here. Now moving to the two-shot of you that picks it up from there, and then moving into a four-shot that comes back from there. As the scene progresses, we're going around the stage. Yeah. Because I don't think you can divorce this conversation from that. I forget it just came from 5 solid minutes of this. Very important to understand that we're reacting the way we would react to seeing this.
Have you had a good pick?
So what does everyone make of that? I mean, this is some mind-shocking stuff. Would they really release something like this? Or is this some kind of mixed soft disclosure with plausible deniability built in? And that's something to think about, not just in the case of the moon landing, but some of these other conspiracies where if there was some kind of release of evidence, would they build in plausible deniability? So all of the gullible coincidence theorists can just immediately write the entire thing off in a false dichotomy logical fallacy by saying, oh, well, this little piece is from here, therefore the entire thing is wrong. The throwing the baby out with the bathwater fallacy. I mean, this just clueless goofery in coincidence theorist hallucination that everything would always be done in a black and white fashion. I mean, clearly they have no understanding of intel at all. The intelligence community does not always work in just easy black and white, because then, of course, it's harder to deny things or support things. Clearly, there's got to be some kind of muddying of the waters. Now, is that what was done here? I am not claiming that that was done here. I am just saying that if this is legitimate or certain pieces of it are legitimate, is it possible that they mixed in with some Capricorn 1 footage just so it could be written off? Because how would they do a real release of information regarding the moon landing hoax? Now, again, that doesn't mean they didn't go in general. That just means that the particular event that was filmed was staged or hoaxed, either while they were really on the moon or not. I mean, that's one of the better theories I've heard, that they did go and they simply, again, either Van Allen radiation belt or whatever, it just couldn't be filmed for whatever reason. And they really did go, but there's just no film that exists. Or maybe they did film it, but the real film was never released, again, for whatever reason. Those that believe in, like, the secret space programs and the bases on Mars, if they think that there was some kind of intelligent life out on the moon, and even bases and all this crazy stuff, in the Cydonia region, of course, there are the pyramids and the face on Mars. I mean, who knows if that's real or doctored or whatever. But if it was real, and if they really did go, and if there are remains of other civilizations, or possibly current active civilizations, UFO encounters, etc., they kind of had the plan to not film it just in case. Because why would they film it live? And here's another point. This is a very basic point I used in episode 1. NASA and the U.S. government would never take the chance. They would never broadcast this live just in case there was an accident or something, because they would look too bad. So they would never, even if they did go, there would never be a live broadcast. There would be a huge, huge delay, and it's just much safer to fake all the footage on Earth. You don't have to deal with the Van Allen radiation belts and all that stuff. So again, a lot of issues here. The flat earthers maintain that the moon might not even be a physical object you can land on, which is a pretty good point. Because if everything is faked and all the videos are faked, I mean, it would also be interesting to use this EMF extraction method on China's moon landing and all that fun. Was it China? Did China and Japan both go to the moon, or was it just China? But other countries' space programs allegedly going to the moon. I mean, this EMF extraction method is very, very interesting. And there possibly are even more smoking guns. I mean, there's definitely more evidence. We're going to go over them. Some of the funnest stuff is just the little details, like people spilling orange juice on their non-sealed astronaut suits, and this is all in the transcript, so we'll be going over that in future episodes, but just wanted to drop those 2 smoking guns. All the Mindshock listeners out there, they can leave their thoughts, theories, comments, debunkings, or rebuttals of any kind in the comment section. Hope you guys enjoyed another edition of the Mindshock podcast, the only podcast out there tackling all of these subjects, conspiracies, true crime cases, with logic and reason at the forefront, not falling for any of these logical fallacies or defaulting to blind faith in the corrupt with horrible track records of failure and lying. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. You could donate to our PayPal, like and share the podcast, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topological analysis podcast requests. You could also be a guest on the podcast depending on your tier. You could also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.